Hello everyone, so this is the third video of a series of video where we were discussing ecology and environment, and this is the third video. And if you have not watched our previous video, that is the first video and second video, then I will suggest watching those videos, because after watching those videos only you will have a better understanding of this video. Okay, so in our last chapter, or last video, we dealt about biomagnification and bioaccumulation, and here we'll see types of biotic interactions. So no animal can live in isolation. As we discussed earlier, they always interact with the elements of environment, both biotic as well as abiotic elements. And what we discussed and we saw how these interactions have led to development of a particular niche for different animals. So today we will discuss it further, types of biotic interaction between or among animals. So how they interact among themselves and also with different species. So the population, which is the species, can interact in these different ways, and they have been mentioned in NCERT. So this table is taken from NCERT. So the very first interaction is mutualism, and see here there is a positive sign for species A as well as there is a positive sign for species B. That is, in this interaction both these species is getting to benefit, are going to benefit from this interaction. That is mutualism. Then we have competition. So first we'll have a look at what does mutualism means. So here, for example, in this figure you can see this is an example of mutualism. Here what is happening is, as you can see, an alligator is there and a bird is cleaning the teeth of alligator. So the alligator keeps open his mouth, the bird comes and it clears the teeth of alligator, whatever material is there. So that works as a food for this bird, and in turn the teeth of alligator is getting cleaned. So here both the bird as well as the alligator is benefiting from this interaction. So this is an example of mutualism. Then the second type of interaction we have is competition. In this competition both the species will have negative effect on them or will lose from it. Okay, so competition generally happens when you have the same resource and both the species are competing for it. Okay, so the competition can be of two types, that is interspecies, that is between two species. For example, you have a flesh and for that a tiger and an eagle is fighting, so that can be said to be an interspecies competition. And here, as you can see, this is intraspecies. So intraspecies competition is generally for mating or mating partner. Okay, so this is the second type of interaction, which is competition. Then we will see predation. And what is predation? In predation, one is benefiting while other is losing. Okay, so in predation what happens, as you know, what's the meaning of predator? So here the lion is feeding upon this zebra. Okay, so lion here is predator, and they are very much important in an ecosystem because they control the population of the prey. It is the prey and it is the predator. There is a prey and predator relationship which is important, because if you will take out the predator from it, then the population of zebra will increase, and that will lead to the grasses which are available there, they will be lost. The grass cover will be lost if the population of zebra will exceed a limit. So that is why it is very important to have a balance between their population. So this was the third type of interaction. Then what we have is parasitism, and this is also a similar interaction wherein one species will gain while the other will lose. So for the best example can be of mosquito. So the mosquito sucks the blood of human or other animals and it gains from it, while the humans or other animals, they lose their blood and have a harmful effect on them. So this is parasitism. Then you have commensalism and amensalism. So these might be new for you, that is why it is important to understand. In commensalism what is happening is, one species will have no effect on it while the other species will have positive effect. For example, as you can see here, these are the ferns which develops on a tree. So these are getting sunlight because of their placement on the tree, and the tree is getting nothing. So this is an example of commensalism. And how to remember or how to not get confused between commensalism and amensalism is, see here you have A. So A is generally used for opposite, amensalism. Okay, so you can remember by this that it will have a negative sign, while here you have C and you will have a positive sign. Then what's the example of amensalism? So there are very few examples of amensalism, and one example is this black walnut secretion or this black walnut tree. So the root of this black nut or black walnut tree, they secrete some chemical that inhibit the growth of other plant here. Okay, so this particular plant gets nothing by doing so, but it is inhibiting the growth of other plant near itself. Okay, so this is an example of amensalism. So having studied this, we'll come to our new section, which is nutrient flow and biochemical cycle. But before we start, I would like to share a quotation from one of my favorite films, The Ship of Theseus, and it says, "It gives me some kick though to know that a part of me was a part of an animal once, a flame, a star. A part will become mineral, flow in a plant, sprout in a fruit, get picked up by a bird. Every atom of my body will be recycled by this universe. You think you are a person, but you are a colony, a microcosm which has 10 times more bacteria in its body than it has human cells." So all it says is whatever we are or whatever our physical body is has been taken from this universe. Okay, it is the material of this universe only, and once we are dead, the same material will go to the universe and will take the form of some other thing like leaf or some other animal. It will be utilized by some other animals. So that is what we are going to study now. So the very first cycle is, we all are aware of it from our very childhood, that is the water cycle. So I will not go in detail. The water cycle is continuous circulation of water in Earth atmosphere, which is driven by solar energy. So this all happens because you have something called sun. If sun is taken out of this picture, all the processes will not take place. So water is an important ecological factor, as cycling of the other nutrient is also dependent on water, because you might be knowing the xylem and phloem, all those, the perspiration and all the things or chemical reactions that also happen in aqueous medium. So that is why water is very crucial. Then some important term which you can find in this figure are evaporation, then vaporization and transpiration. So you should be very clear with these terms. If you don't know, then you might be knowing. I think everybody might be knowing. So what is happening here is the water, it is getting evaporated, then they condense to form this cloud, and then precipitation happens. So this will go on and will form a cycle. Okay, the water can be evaporated from ocean, then other places also, then ices also. So this will happen, and sometimes sublimation also happen. So this is one of the thing which was very easy, as I think. Now come to the main point, which is important, the carbon cycle, and then we will see the nitrogen cycle. These are very much important. So carbon is the base of all organic life form on the earth. Then carbon cycle involves a continuous exchange of carbon between atmosphere and the organism. Then short-term cycle, and there are basically two types of cycle, you can say. One is short-term cycle, wherein you have photosynthesis, then respiration, photosynthesis and that respiration, and in it decomposition and burning also happens. So basically by photosynthesis, the atmospheric carbon is taken by the plant and stored in plant. Okay, and that storage is further consumed by other organism in the food chain, and finally through respiration all the animals they exhale carbon dioxide back to your atmosphere, and through decomposition also the carbon is sent back to atmosphere, and through burning also it is sent back to atmosphere. Then you also have long-term cycle, the carbonates and bicarbonates in rocks and minerals. Then you have coals and oil and natural gas. Some of the organism they will die and decay, and they will be deposited beneath the earth, and they will form coal and natural gas, etc. So this is one thing. So and now look at this figure. So the gray ones are the stores of carbon, which is the very first storage atmosphere. There's soil and organic matter, and we'll come to this store. We'll come to this carbon sequestration or sequestration. What is that? But just look at this figure and try to understand. So these are the stores. Then your vegetation. See, a tree. When you plant a tree, it is very small, and then you give it water and minerals or fertilizers, and it will develop after a few years into a big tree weighing some tons. So what is that material which comes to it which weighs so much ton? So actually most of it is carbon, and that has been taken from atmosphere as CO2, and further it is converted into carbohydrate or starch or different things, okay, because all organic matter that contains carbon. So basically the most of the mass of the tree is carbon, and that comes through the process of respiration. Okay, now come to this point. So now you have understood that. So this vegetation, whatever vegetation we see on earth, whether it is tree or some plant, that is a form of carbon. Then you have coal, and then oil, then gases, they are also a form of carbon which are stored. Then sedimentary and sediments or sedimentary rocks, they are also a form of carbon stored. So these are stored carbon. Then you have ocean surface and marine animals, they are also carbon stuff. Then at deep ocean also you have some carbon. So these are the carbon storages. Now these carbon storage will come out of this stored area through the process of respiration. Then when they decay, for example, some of the bacteria they will free it, or some of the detritivores they will free them. Then by burning, when we will burn the fossil fuel, then it will come out as carbon dioxide. Then again it will also come out by volcanic eruption also, then and then by other processes also. So the stored carbon can come out of the storage and go to the atmosphere. So atmosphere itself is a storage of carbon, and as we know that some 1% of carbon is there nearly, and that is leading to global warming, and some percentage is also important to keep the earth warm. Okay, so atmosphere itself is the storage of carbon, and from atmosphere how the vegetation will get carbon back, it will get through something called photosynthesis, and then some other photosynthesis also happens in ocean by phytoplanktons. So these are the ways of storing carbon and then releasing carbon. These are the ways of releasing carbon. So these are the decay, then burning, then respiration are the form of releasing carbon. So I think you got this, and then we'll come to nitrogen cycle. But before that, there is something called carbon sequestration. And what is that? It is a process by which carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere and held in solid or liquid form. So say for example, if you will plant more tree or create a artificial forest, then what will happen? A lot of tree will develop out there. So what are those tree basically? Basically most of the material within tree is carbon only. So you are taking carbon from the atmosphere and putting it into tree. So that is called carbon sequestration, and that can happen by afforestation, and that is one of the way we can reduce global warming. So we will deal with this term further. So this was about carbon. Now we'll come to nitrogen cycle, and here you will have to remember a lot of names, so be ready for that. So nitrogen is basically available in the atmosphere, but it is free nitrogen and it cannot be used by most of the animals or plants directly. So it needs to be fixed. And what is that fixation and who can do it? We'll deal with that. Nitrogen fixation is required before it can be used by most of the organism. So conversion into amino acid happens, and that amino acid is present in us in the form of protein. Now the fixation can happen by basically three processes. What are those? There are some microscopic bacteria like blue-green algae which will convert those atmospheric nitrogen to a form which we can use. Then it can also happen by thunder or lightning. So basically, to what form they are converting? They are converting the free nitrogen to ammonia or nitrite or nitrates. Okay. Then there is some anthropogenic input also, the fertilizers we use. From there also we can get that. Okay. Now the free living nitrifying bacteria which will convert the free nitrogen into these three forms, which are ammonia, nitrites or nitrate, which can be used by living being or organism, most of the organism. So there are basically three ways of doing that. One is it can be done by free living nitrifying bacteria. Then there are symbiotic nitrifying bacteria, and then there are blue-green algae which can do it. Okay, in free living nitrifying bacteria we have two, that is aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic, the example for aerobic bacteria doing that is Azotobacter, and the example for anaerobic bacteria doing that is Clostridium. Then similarly we have symbiotic nitrifying bacteria. The very first example is leguminous plant. Okay, and the non-leguminous root nodule, for that we have example of rhizobium. So you should try to remember these name, the rhizobium, then Azotobacter, then Clostridium. Azotobacter is aerobic and Clostridium is anaerobic. Okay, then you have the third thing, that is blue-green algae, and the example of blue-green algae is Anabaena and Spirulina. So try to remember these names. If you wish, you can take a screenshot and try to remember. And then again, some organism can't take ammonium ion. So what they do, these organisms, they will convert into ammonia. So some of the organisms who cannot take ammonia directly, so for them it is necessary that ammonium ion should be converted to nitrite first and then to nitrate. So the organism which convert the ammonium ion to nitrite are called as nitromonas, or nitromonas are the organism which convert ammonium ion to nitrite, and the bacteria which converts nitrite to nitrate is Nitrobacter. So these are also important for you, so try to remember. Then the nitrites thus taken by plant are converted into amino acid or source of protein. Okay, during the excretion and upon death of organism, nitrogen is returned to the soil as ammonia. Now denitrifying bacteria, now that nitrogen has been taken as amino acid and upon excretion it will come back as ammonia. Now that ammonia should be converted into free nitrogen which can be sent back to the atmosphere, and that is done by another type of bacteria, the name of which is Pseudomonas. Okay, so try to remember all these names. Again, the names which are very much important, I will again revise for you. The very first thing is the fixation of nitrogen can happen through three processes, and what are those? Those are through microscopic bacteria or blue-green algae, or through thunder or lightning, and anthropogenic inputs. So basically this is very much important and we'll discuss it further. The first thing is free living nitrifying bacteria, that is they are free, they do not live in some symbiotic relation with other organism. Okay, so aerobic bacteria is Azotobacter, then anaerobic bacteria is Clostridium, then the bacteria which lives in symbiotic relation are leguminous plant, the bacteria which lives with leguminous plant, and the bacteria which lives with non-leguminous plant or root in the root nodule, and the example of it is rhizobium. Then we will come to blue-green alga. There are two, Anabaena and Spirulina. Then we will come to some of the animals which cannot take ammonium ion, so it is necessary for them to convert ammonium ion to nitrite and then nitrate, and this is done by Nitrosomonas and Nitrobacter. And then again this ammonia is getting converted into free nitrogen by a process called denitrification, or denitrifying bacteria do this, and the name of such bacteria is Pseudomonas. So likewise the cycle is getting converted. So the same thing has been represented here in this diagram. So the diagram is quite easy. If you can understand all these things, you will easily understand this. So this was all about nitrogen cycle, and it is very important. So now we also have some other cycles like phosphorus cycle and sulfur cycle, but those are not that much important, and they are basically sedimentary cycle, and it will take thousands of years to get completed. They are deposited inside rock and they will come out by the process of weathering or chemical action. Okay, so weathering and chemical action releases them out of rock. They enter atmosphere by volcanic and human activities. So these are some of the facts you should be knowing. Then we'll deal with one important concept, which is ecological succession.